vlog dropped. And so, like, tired of fucking internet and a dog picking me apart. Some of you people who make your money off of social media, you're ruthless and inhuman. So why are people? Why do people transition? Like in some ways, I don't know that there's a reason, right? Like I legit don't know that there's a reason. It's a bit like being. It's a bit like being homosexual. It's like not all. I mean, like there may be reasons like I had my first boyfriend when I had my first boyfriend was like 14, was my first legit sexual experience. He was 20, I was 14. Classifies as statutory rape, but I don't know that it wasn't like that. You look at something like homosexuality, like homosexuals, there's no reason why homosexuals are homosexuals. Maybe homosexuals are homosexuals because they had more of an affinity to the same-sex parent versus the opposite sex parent. Maybe like is that abnormal? But that doesn't I mean, maybe like if you have more, if you're born, I just doesn't make any sense to me. You know, like there are tons of people out there who, you know, come from single parent families. It doesn't necessarily affect their sexuality. I don't see why people who transition, you know, coming from single parent families would be any more of a precursor to transitioning versus hardship or poverty or whatever. I don't. Apparently in Thailand with the Gatoi, the lady boys, a large reason why they exist is due to prostitution, but you could also say destitution, you know, because they're completely destitute and they're a way of making money. It's a way of making money to survive. So families see one that is. I mean, that's maybe a bit of a bastardization of it of the same sort, like saying that you see it in your child and thus you let it flourish. But it very much seems like a lot of Thai parents don't want their children to grow up to be lady boys. You know, and why more? Why is it just more focus on lady boys, or is it just more of a focus because there's trans men in Thailand as well, but it's not there's absolutely no focus on it, which could be an aspect of patriarchy, but it's also like could be an aspect of objectification and misogyny because we don't objectify men like we do women, but there very much seems to be a survival aspect to it in Thailand. But then at the same time too, you get countries like Vietnam where like prostituting a child is kind of somewhat commonplace. And you know, and whilst you might say, well, that's a pretty derogatory, shameful thing to say, right? But and typically, like prostituting a child to a white business, you know, sex tourist, you know, there's, or like Cambodia, there's little like literal sex tourism in Cambodia. There's like these pedophiles that get on a bus and do a sex tour, you know, it's just crazy. But you know, and the majority of them are all like white business dudes. It's my running joke about politicians. I don't know. You can make any argument as to why people transition. Like I notice on YouTube, there are, like over in the States, there are a lot of like black girls who've transitioned. Why is it like that? Don't know. You know, why is it like that in Thailand? Don't know. Why is there a significant amount of it in India? India is an incredibly patriarchal society, and like you can say that like affection or adoration between men is kind of commonplace, you know, and that it's a very bisexual society in relation to men. And it's not deemed, like the affection between men in India is not deemed wrong in India. But yet in European culture, right, it was the exact same thing 200 years ago. You know, it was very much common that like maybe you would get a wife, you know, but it was like having sex with men, whilst it was frowned upon because Christianity, you know, says that it's frowned upon. It was extremely commonplace, you know, for a man to have a wife, children, a household, and various boyfriends throughout life, just like it is kind of common throughout parts of Europe for men to have mistresses these days. But it almost seems like the sexuality is malleable. But that also does not make sense. Like a lot of this just does not make sense. And anyone who like attempts to formulate data on it and write books and stuff like that is just, it's just shite, right? It's just rubbish, because nobody can make an argument as to why, a lot of time, why things are the way they are. You know, in terms of something like looking like the DSM-2 spectrum, you know, you're like, is it environmental or genetic? And nobody can really quite tell. Like, is schizophrenia or autism environmental or genetic? You know, autism seems to be very much genetic. It seems to be a typical mainstay, yet with schizophrenia, which can be linked to autism, why it's in the same spectrum, or has been previously, you know, it's like, that almost seems environmental. It seems like it's something like, it could be an environmental trigger of a genetic thing. I don't know. Sometimes I think about like Klinger from that old show MASH, where Klinger is like dressing like a woman so he can get out of were they in Vietnam? So he can get out of the war and go home. I'm already home. Why would I be like that? and two, I don't know if the transitioning is a form of empowerment. You know, you could say something like, due to oppression in the U.S. of like black people, there is a large amount of black trans girls, you know, who are simply trying to regain a level of autonomy, a level of individuality, a level of self-worth, a level of social self-worth, because we objectify women more than men. But but conversely, you could also make the argument that it's a genetic demographic. So really, you can't make an argument. You know, I can't look back at my life and say, like I can look back at my life and say, it was here that I began to transition, you know, but I also know why, right? Society was changing, and it was like, oh, maybe I could actually do this, right? Because it was something that it was like being a